everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on Porch Time today. I'm out here pretty early this morning. It's kind of cool. Had to put a jacket on to sit outside this morning, which is not a bad thing in the Deep South. Got a lot to do today. I'm smoking bacon today. Gonna be possibly working on an RV some today. We got a lot of things that's just got to be done today. We may be making probably tomorrow we'll be doing ground meat and sausage and stuff like that. So I got a ton of work that's got to be done on a short period of time, so I've got to get busy doing it. We've got sugar cane orders we've got to get done today where we can get them out tomorrow. We just got a lot of things that we on the agenda, so I've got to get Porch Time up and rolling this morning early. So I'm out here with y'all. It is actually before 5 o'clock in the morning, so I'm trying to get this done. But what I want to talk about today on Porch Time is growing your own food versus buying your food. You know, where have we come from? Where are we at today? What has transpired during these transactions of the way life works now? I went back and done some research on this because it's kind of interesting to me. I love the evolution of things and how that things evolve. I love that. And I went back and, you know, we use the term grocery store here in this country. And the word grocery was derived from a French word, actually, that meant grossier, which meant meant wholesale. And y'all may hear traffic in the background. This time of the morning, people in the country go to work. Which came from a Latin word, which the French word actually came from a Latin word, and I'm probably not pronouncing these right, guys, so don't hold me to that. But grossaires, or so, however they pronounce it like that. Which meant seller of dry goods and stuff like that. And typically, your early grocery stores basically sold just dry goods, things like sugar and coffee and tea and different things like this is what your early grocery stores basically sold. When staple foods became available in cans, then at that point, the market began to expand for grocery stores because they could open up many new avenues about how that they could do business. And it's at that point we began to see the evolution of food and how that it transpired in a country that was once strictly, everything was done basically around the house. It was centered around the house. In the United States, early stores literally descended from, I guess, what you would call trading posts. If you watched early westerns and stuff like that, you always saw people on the wagon trains as they was moving west and different things like that. They were always looking for trading posts because on those wagon trains they could not carry lots of bulk supplies of food along with them on the wagon train to be able to be sustainable. So they would look for trading posts along the way, or back then it would be what we call a grocery store today. Now, a trading post was a little bit different than a grocery store was. A trading post carried dry goods. It carried things like furniture, seeds, I mean, literally, they carried an array of different things because on this trip, people would need different things to sustain them till the next trading post. And then sometimes in between trading posts, people would settle and they would need places to go back to and to actually purchase goods till they could get off on their feet on their homestead and actually get things going. After trading posts, then came things like general stores. Now, general stores during the early American history predominantly only sold dry goods. I mean, they sold things like dry beans, flour, sugar, rice, baking soda. You know, things like this is basically some of the things that they sold during that time. Now, they're not anything like what you're used to today. Perishable foods were basically sold by specialty places. If you wanted meat, you went to a butcher shop. If you wanted milk or cheese or anything like that, you went to a dairy place. There was niches for each individual thing because back then one store did not do it all. They just didn't have the facilities. You know, it was just different then than it is now, and I think that that's kind of unique in its own way because it gave small towns and families and stuff like that the opportunity for small businesses. And I think that's where you know, a lot of our small businesses probably derived from, and it helped a lot of families be sustainable during that time, which was a good thing. Things like eggs and vegetables and stuff like that, they were all produced at home. People did not go to the store to buy eggs. They didn't go to the stores to buy vegetables and stuff like that. That kind of stuff was predominantly raised on a homestead. And that's the kind of stuff that made up the bulk of the food that people consumed on a homestead. You know, it's one of those things that I guess just made life more sustaining. Now that's not to say that there weren't homesteads that produced their own meat, that produced their own grain and stuff like this, because there was those places. Just like then and just like now, there were homesteads that were more sustainable than other homesteads. Now, there's always been, since the beginning of mankind, there's always been that element of people that lived inside of a city or a walled community or whatever you want to call it, a gated communities and stuff like that, that went out to market to buy their food. And there's always been those people in the country that went into the cities, into the fresh markets and sold their vegetables and their fruits and their fishes and stuff like that and their animals. You've always had that since the beginning of mankind. And it wasn't until after that point in time that that chain stores began to I don't know if you call it chain stores, self-service. Let me call it this. Self-service grocery stores became into existence. Now, Piggly Wiggly was the first that I've been able to find grocery store that self-service grocery store that came into existence, and that was in 1916 in Memphis, Tennessee. And I use the word self-service because up until that point in history, you would walk up to a counter and you would hand the man behind the counter your grocery list, and he would have his clerks fill that for you, or either you would ask for certain grocery items and he would get them for you. Now, I know that seems a little foreign to us today because everything today is so mechanized. Could you imagine going to somewhere like Walmart or Target or somewhere like that and handing your grocery list to someone behind the counter and standing and waiting for them to fill that list, and as many people as they would be in a store today? It's just not feasible. There's too many people. And so Piggly Wiggly, I think a Mr. Saunders was his name, actually come up with this idea of self-service. In other words, letting a person walk around in a grocery store and actually pick up their own goods and bring them up to a counter to be checked out. It meant less people had to be in the store to actually do the work, and the person could choose their own food. Imagine that! You could choose your own food. You could pick up items yourself, handle them, and sit them back down if you didn't like them. Boy, wasn't that a concept? Used to, people didn't ask any questions. You just went up, handed your list to the guy behind the counter, or told him, I want so much of this, I want so much of that. You knew what you wanted before you went to the store. It wasn't none of this going in and just walking up and down aisles and coming up with, picking up things and saying, oh, I forgot I needed this, and then buying things you really didn't need, which that's the whole concept of the grocery stores today, is buying things that you really don't need. But Mr. Saunders with Piggly Wiggly in 1916 was one of the first self-service grocery stores available, which I thought was amazing because I didn't even realize that. I never thought about that concept until I started doing a little bit of looking into this. After that point became what we call supermarkets or chain stores, or however you want to say it. They that concept took off so well that that businesses saw opportunities to open multiple stores in different areas under one name, so therefore supermarkets became the norm at that time. And in these different supermarkets, you could get an array of different foods. And it's at this point that we begin to see the degradation of being self-sustainable, because people could then not have to worry about raising their own food anymore. Even country people, they could say, oh, well, I can just go to the grocery store and get it. And it opened up the opportunity for what we know today as big ag. A few farms began to mass produce foods, because you have to understand, we just went through an era in the Great Depression where farmers were producing so much food and there was such little amounts of money that food was virtually worth nothing. Nobody was making any money. There was so much out there that the supply was more than the demand was, and the government actually went in and told a lot of the farmers, look, you got to quit producing food, we'll subsidize you, like we talked about before, the first subsidies that came out. And then everything began, the Industrial Revolution had come in, things began to be mechanized, and it just made where one man with machinery could produce 10 times what a man by hand and mules and horses usually could produce. So we see the degradation of being self-sustaining at that point begins to happen. And then after that point, we see that we have today what's called hypermarkets. We have super Walmarts, we have Targets, and these kinds of things, which are called hypermarkets. And these hypermarkets are where you can go in. They're a lot like the trading post was of its day. A person can go in, they can get anything from furniture to seeds, dry goods, frozen goods, fresh meats, fresh vegetables. You can get all that stuff in it, and it's you can get anything from anywhere in the world. You don't have to eat in season anymore. You can you can go against the nature that God created for man to eat in season, and you can get anything. You can have blueberries in the dead of winter. You can have strawberries in the dead of winter. You can have bananas in the dead of winter. And hypermarkets is, because of our rat race world that we live in, hypermarkets has become the way. If you don't believe me, just see how fast someone gets frustrated when they can't get through an aisle real quick. That's the reason they have the speed checkout aisles now, where you can check your own self out with a card, because you don't want to stand and wait behind somebody else. And That's how impatient we've become in this country over our food system. But now, raising your own versus buying your food, what are the differences there? We talked a little bit about the history of the mechanizing of food in this country and the degradation of it. What about raising your own? Is raising your own really feasible? I mean, do you save money? The answer is no. You do not save money. There's many times that raising your own food actually costs more than going to a grocery store. And, you know, I've had discussions with people here lately about, you know, why would you want to raise your own? Because you can get it so much cheaper. And guys, it's just like this. The world that we live in today, there's so many chemicals being used on foods that are not intended for the human body, just so that it can be mass produced, so that big ag and corporations can, you know, so that they can have control of things. And it's all about control. And it's about taking away the self-sustainability of individuals and making them dependent upon a system. And guys, I'm telling you, please do whatever you can to raise your own food. You may not be able to raise it all. Now here at Deep South Homestead, we're about, like I've told y'all, we're about 85% sustainable with our own food. If we could get the meat thing under control, we'd probably be closer to 95. But we're you know, we're having some issues there. It takes a lot of money to set up infrastructure and to get your first animals and stuff like that. Now, you know, we are into some rabbits, and we do have, we are able to take a deer every so often, and you know, chickens and stuff like that. But guys, I mean, we need beef and things like that, and we just haven't got there yet. You know, we have some pigs and we have a sheep and stuff like that, but we've got to, as we get older, we got to move toward a more sustainable type of lifestyle, meat-wise, that we can handle in our older age. So I always encourage and beg people, please try to raise what you can. I mean, even if it's just 4 or 5 tomato plants or 4 or 5 pepper plants, try to raise some of what you eat and not depend 100% on the grocery stores today. I'm amazed at how many people today have no clue where their food's coming from. Guys, I didn't get a chance to do all the research on this, but some of the stuff I looked at said only 3% of our food system is coming from commercial farms here in America. That means the rest of it is being imported in from only God knows where, and only God knows what's being put on it or anything about it. So it would be it would be in our interest to try to start being a little more self-sustainable. And yes, it's going to cost more. You know, a lot of people try to go organic as much as possible, and I applaud that because I don't want a chemical on my place. And I never use spray chemicals on my place. Never. I will not allow it. I'll fight, and I have fought. I fought power companies and everything, keeping them away from our land, and I've been successful so far. But there comes times when I plant fields of corn that I have to use some commercial fertilizer to do that. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that because a plant doesn't know the difference between commercial fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, organic fertilizers. That plant doesn't know the difference. All it knows is it's taking up what it needs and what it doesn't need. Now, if I could, if I could come up with enough natural fertilizer to fertilize my my fields, yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat. It's just that for me to be sustainable at this point, I don't have that much animal manure to put in my fields. So we do what we have to do. But, guys, is raising your own food cheaper than buying your food? The answer usually is going to be no. But is it a wiser decision? The answer is yes. Because you know more about where your food's coming from. You know what's been put on your food. You know how it was grown, the sustainability that it provides, that it's a lot more healthy than store-bought food is. Most store-bought food has zero nutritional value to it. It has no living enzymes left in it because I think it's like 98% of it's been irradiated, which means that it has no living enzymes in it anymore. So at that point, it ceases to be useless to the human body. So, you know, a lot of your tomatoes that are grown in greenhouses and stuff like that, I think a tomato has like 56 different minerals that's inside it and vitamins. A greenhouse grown one during the wintertime only has like 12. So, guys, there are differences in these things. So, I can't keep Porch Time going too much longer today. It's getting daylight, as y'all can see here behind me. And this morning, Wanda's cooking breakfast instead of me, so I can get out here and do Porch Time. So, I got to get in and get breakfast to eat so we can get busy smoking some meat and working on the RV and other things. So guys, thank you for joining us here on Porch Time today. I hope a little bit of this information has been valuable to you. Maybe it helps you understand a little bit more about our food system and how it's evolved. And let's head down the right road. Let's try to be a little bit more sustainable about what we do on our homesteads instead of depending so much on the big box stores. Thank y'all from Deep South Homestead.